Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quinten Q Krzysko, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
The Chicago Bears just took down the Carolina Panthers 36-10. They are now 3-2, over 500, 5 weeks into the season now. I don't know the last time that we could have said that about this team. Maybe that was like 2020, probably 2020 was the last time we could really say that about this team. Exciting stuff. My name is Quinten Krzysko. I'm joined by Sonny Verma. We are Bears on Tap. Sonny, how are you doing this fine evening?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's nice to have a satisfying win like that. It's been a while, just like Scott just said. That was just a fun game to watch. You know, it's obviously the first drive, Caleb almost threw a pick six, but beyond that, at that point, it seemed like we had kind of control of the game, and we did what we want the Bears to do, right? If the Bears are entering that next level of competitiveness, then you're supposed to beat down the poor teams, especially at home. And that's exactly what happened today. And it was just nice to watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's refreshing, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and try to say the Panthers were in a team that we didn't think the Bears should beat, right? Sure. Like, they're a team that they're supposed to beat. It's just nice to see them do it so convincingly, so easily. Like, I mean, they were, 4-point favorites by the end of today, or by the time it kicked off. I mean, the last time I can remember the Bears being like a more than a 3-point favorite against anyone and really coming out and just pounding them, like we say in the title here. Probably, I mean, I don't know. They were 4.5-point favorites against Arizona last year. They won that game somewhat convincingly, but it wasn't really just a butt whipping. In 2022, they beat the Giants really handedly as 6.5-point favorites. Like that one was, but that was a nothing Giants team. Like they would have loved to have Andy Dalton at quarterback, right? Like that's a different level of bad. Yeah. So to me, it's really refreshing that like they took care of business. I was nervous. I was nervous at first, where it's like they come out the first drive, they're throwing the football right off the bat. When one of the keys to the game that I had was like, keep it on the ground. This defense can't stop the run. Keep it on the ground, right? And it's like they come out pass, then 2nd and 10, they're running. It's not much. Then they're having to pass again, and Caleb takes the sack, and it's just like, here we go again. Like why aren't we playing to their weakness, where it's just right in front of us, staring us in the face? But then they next drive, they fix it. You know, there's run. They establish that run game and build the pass off of it. Very exciting. Sonny, what are your general thoughts after this victory?
You know, it's just, and I like that we just played aggressively, right? As you said, 4-point favorites, but we were the better team, clearly, even coming into the game. But the fact that you could name off in the last couple of years just how many times that there were certain spreads, and you remember those games, shows you how little it happens. Right? Like it shows you that, you know, like even though we went up against a team that were clearly better than, recent history tells us that we'll keep the game close. And, you know, sometimes end up losing those games. And this team didn't do that today. And it was almost the opposite. Same way. For me, this was clearly a game I didn't want to lose, just because of the whole history between the Bears and Panthers over the last 2 seasons, I guess, at this point, since that trade was made. But, you know, seeing DJ Moore catch those touchdowns, and Caleb getting better every single day, which is exactly what I was hoping for, which is what I said 2 weeks ago, last time I was on the show. I mean, there's a smile on my face, right? Like all the uneasiness I had after 3 weeks of the season, wondering if my expectations of making the playoffs was I should have known better. Well, now I'm looking at the schedule. Now I'm seeing 3-2, and I'm seeing the next handful of games, and I'm wondering, like, can we be 6-2 going into division play? Like, the aspirations are still there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why not. I mean, their schedule's pretty friendly, and to your point, like I just pulled it up right here. In Matt Eberflus's time as head coach, the Bears have only been favorites 9 times. Like they've lost 2 of those games, you know, like so it hasn't been an automatic here in this recent stretch, like 2 years and change. But you mentioned their upcoming schedule. Like let's just talk about that a little before we get into the game. You know, they got Jacksonville in London. I'm in a group chat I'm in earlier today. People were talking about the Jets Vikings game that was going on in London, and within that, I just said at one point, like, I can't put much weight on anything that happens in these London games.
Yeah,
they're just always weird. They're always fluky and odd, and there's always stuff that I'm left wondering, like, I don't know if that's really representation of either of these teams. So, like, that's the weird part there. I'm glad to see Jacksonville just got their win this week.
Right.
Like, what, I didn't want to face them before they won a game. Like, if they were 0-5, they're really real in it going to London where they're more familiar than any team in the NFL. But anyways, then you got the bye, you got the Commanders, Cardinals. The Cardinals are frisky, but like and the Commanders, they're what, 5-0 now? Like,
yeah, that's gonna be a storyline. Caleb against Daniels. Like,
yeah,
I think they're gonna flex that game.
I think if they have the opportunity, I think they should.
Right? I don't
know.
I
think that's a ratings like monster right there.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if there's any big rivalry games that particular week, but to me, it's just like you get to talk about that rookie matchup, a potentially undefeated Commanders team, and you know the Bears with hopefully at that point just 2 losses. You know, it seems like a money grab.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I know they're 5-0. I know I've been wrong all year about them. Them and the Vikings both. Like, I thought both of them were going to be in the pits this year, and they've proven me wrong. But, like, I'm still sitting here saying that team doesn't have the talent.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think the Bears should lose a game to the Commanders, even though the Commanders are 5-0. Like, I don't see I don't know if there's a position outside of maybe D tackle that I feel like they're more talented than the Bears.
Yeah. And they beat up a Browns team, which they might have the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. Like the fall that Deshaun Watson has had. One of my dearest friends is a diehard former season ticket holder of the Cleveland Browns. And when I say this man is down, this man is down. Like they can't wait to get rid of him. The Jameis talk has already happened.
And to Scott's point, Commanders aren't 5-0. They're 4-1. I'm getting ahead of myself there. They're 4-1. It wouldn't surprise, like, if I'm being frank, and this is a Bears podcast, we won't harp too much on this, but like the Commanders' upcoming schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped 4 of the next 5 of the next 6 of the next 7. Like, it's their schedule. They have beaten some good teams so far, but like, I just don't think that the talent has to regress to the average, right? It has to like come back to where it makes more sense, and they're the prime example of that in my mind. But anyways, enough of that. After the Cardinals, you got the Patriots, and then you finally, by week 11, you get to division play with the Packers. So your next 4 games all feel winnable, like you said.
Right, 3-1 is reasonable.
7-2, 6-3. Like, there's truth to that thought process there that I think is very valid.
Especially if we have a continuation of the trajectory our offense is showing on a week-to-week basis. Like, whatever conversation the team leaders had with Shane Waldron a couple of weeks back, that worked. Because all of a sudden, now granted, we're not playing, the elite of teams, but that's not the point here. Like, the execution is working. Caleb himself is getting better. I was taking a look at the distribution today. We had like 6 or 7 different wide receivers catch 2 or 3 balls today. DJ Moore obviously had a great game. I'm super happy for him, especially against his old team. But everything's just clicking. DeAndre Swift, a guy who many people wanted gone after the first 3 weeks, wanted more Roschon. He looks like all of a sudden that he may actually end up being worth that contract that we signed him for. So it's one thing if we were playing a daunting schedule, but we're better, or at least we're at the same level of these teams that are in our path right now. And so, 3-1, which brings us to 6-3 or whatever. Or I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, it's exciting right now as a Bears fan. It's starting to feel like this thing can be rolling. And so you're talking about the progression of Caleb, right? Like we can just quarterback rating is a really flawed thing, but like it's easy to point at. So we're gonna use that right now. And so like week 1, 55.7, week 2, 51, week 3, 80.8, week 4, 106.6, this week 126.2. It's pretty clear trajectory. And granted, the defenses have gotten easier the last 2 weeks, but like you play who's on the schedule, and all you can judge someone off is how they've executed it. And like it's no different than Sam Darnold right now. All you can do is judge how he's executing and say, "Oh, isn't that nice?" But like it's going the right way. And for Caleb right now, it's going the right way. And I love to see him commanding the offense the way he is. It feels like everything is really starting to click for him. And it's not, I think they've pulled it back a little versus what he was doing like week 1, week 2, but not that much. Like
Sure.
he's still commanding a lot at the line of scrimmage. He's still doing a lot of checks, calling the protections. As we heard on the broadcast, Coleman Shelton yelling at him, "There's an effing fire here. We can't do that." Like, but I like that. I like seeing that because that means they're communicating with each other. Where week 1, week 2, Coleman Shelton might not have been saying that. And that might have been why some of the issues were happening, because a protection is being called a certain way. And he's like, well, that's not going to work. This guy's right here. But there's not the communication aspect, which on the road is tougher to do too, because it's louder. But at home, he can just yell at him like, no, that we're not doing that. You're going to get killed if we do that.
Exactly. It's, we talked about this after the loss, I think, to Indianapolis. The disconcerting thing was we know the schedule is weak up front, the first half of the schedule. But that's why I was kind of so frustrated. It's like I wanted us to try to load up on the wins because it looks like this division might be the toughest one in the NFL. And so we need to have our 6 or 7 wins, to try to go 500 in the division afterwards. And when we're losing games to like Indianapolis, you just wonder where we were headed. Now, obviously, we bounced back with a good win against the Rams, and now a very, again, the word I keep using is satisfying victory over the Panthers. And all of a sudden, you're getting those. We're 3 wins in, and the next 4 or 5 are winnable as well. And again, get to 6, get to 7. And then all of a sudden we give ourselves a little breathing room for when, the Ram, or we play the Vikings and the Lions and Green Bay. I think Green Bay's first, right, on our schedule.
Yeah, we got Green Bay week 11. That's the first division game.
Yeah, I thought so.
But, and even you mentioned the Colts.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure the Colts are bad. I mean, I'm looking at, they beat the Steelers last week. They beat the Bears a week before, obviously. They lost to Green Bay within 1 score, and they lost to the Texans by 2 points. And they lost the Jaguars today. They hadn't won in Jacksonville since 2015. There's a little something there about the division matchup, but also like they took them to the wire with their backup quarterback in there. They gave them everything they got against a team who was desperate to get a win. Like, I do think we overlook the Colts quite a bit as a fan base because they are a talented football team.
Fair enough. I might have my preseason bias taking over when I say this. Obviously, I didn't pay attention to what they've done recently since then. But regardless, it's for where the Bears should be. There's still a team that Colts should lose to the Bears, and I feel like the opportunities were there. And for me, just being down 1-2 at that point with the record. My hope was, I talked about it. Is this going to be a, hey, can we make the playoffs and watch Caleb develop type of season? Or is this just a, let's watch Caleb develop type of season? And now it looks like we're back on to both.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And like, I even think back to like before week 1, we talked about on our pregame show, it might end up being a really important game for the Bears because you want to say you can beat the Texans, but you figured that's going to be a tougher game in reality. So you might lose that one. And the Colts might be a toss-up. And next thing you know, you got the Rams who, when they were healthy, were a lot scary. And you could be talking about a 0-4, 1-3 start there. Like the 1-3 is a lot different than the 0-4. So like you had to get that week 1 game.
Sure.
because you don't really hit a soft spot until the Panthers game again this week, and then you have a real soft spot. They got to the soft spot at 2-2 here. Now we're 3-2. It's looking good.
It's looking good. It's feeling good. I saw some of the press conferences after the post game, and like everyone's smiling. Like there seems to be a level of confidence, and it seemed like the coaching staff was scrambling after week 3, but now just the stuff that they're saying actually makes sense. Again, finding DeAndre Swift a role on this team and letting him do what he's really, really good at and trying to minimize what he's not very good at. Again, it's nice to build the confidence because this is such a young team, right? Winning games like this is only going to help down the road when that schedule gets tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. It's just there's a lot to be excited about from this game. Like let's just dive into some of what some of the players did here. I mean, and kind of how the game went, because we already touched on a little bit. Like the Bears, they forced the punt to start the game, but then they have a 3-and-out of their own with Caleb taking a sack in there, and then they give up the touchdown. Right.
And that was a bad first drive. He almost threw a pick 6 too, and I was just like, I don't know if you recall that one.
Was that the first pass to Keenan Allen, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that, my initial thought was, I bet you he was just expecting a hook. It was probably an option route where Keenan said, it was like, Keenan, if you see this, you're running the speed out. If you see this, you're running the hook or the hitch, whatever you want to call it. And Keenan thought it was going to be a hitch, or Keenan thought it should be an out. Caleb thought it should be a hitch, and ball's way off the mark. Post-game comments comes out. That was wind. The wind was really strong. The ball might have been a little off the mark to begin with. You hate to just say it's the wind. Like that feels a little cheap to me, but like
sure.
Considering that he didn't have another ball like that all game.
Yeah.
I'm willing to believe a bit more that it was the wind. Because my first thought when I saw it was so off the mark. I was like, that's a miscommunication. Like you don't miss that badly unless it's a miscommunication or that wind is crazy. I guess the wind was just crazy because he was also talking about it on a Cole Kmet pass later in the game where it basically turned it into a slider. Like it was just like veering off because the wind, there was a gush of wind that just took the ball.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, I must have missed that part. But yeah, like you said, 3-and-out, then Carolina comes back and Hubbard, gets a 38-yard touchdown. And, that's, you and Ron did such a great job talking about previewing this game. It's like, just contain that one guy.
Yeah.
That one really big weapon that they have. And then, he scores pretty much the first series. Or was it the second series?
Second.
Yeah, second series. And it's just like, oh, boy. That's when all of a sudden I'm just like, why can't we just have an easy win? Like, here we go again. This is a team we're clearly better at. We're at home. But then we just kind of turned things around. All of a sudden, Carolina's defense could not stop anything we threw at them.
Yeah, I mean, then they leaned into the run game. Like after that touchdown that they gave up, it was DeAndre Swift 8 yards, DeAndre Swift 3 yards, Caleb to Rome for 11 yards, Caleb to Keenan for 3, DeAndre Swift for 7, DeAndre Swift for 4. Like the run game, they leaned into it a lot more. First down runs, like they were not, which, I'm not going to sit here and always be a guy asking for a ton of early down rushing, but against a team, you can run the football against, I don't see any reason why not. Like, and to me, that's playing easy football, right?
Yeah.
You say, we know we can run on these guys. If we can get 5 yards on first down, that's an automatic do it. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And against this Panthers front, who is super banged up, felt like you should be able to do that all day long. And that's what we saw them do after that. And they were able to create some play action looks off of that. I think the first DJ touchdown was a play action look, like a shotgun play action, but still play action. And it just rolled from there. It goes Bears 7-7, Bears 14-7, Bears 21-7. Then right before half, even 27-7 with our old friend Eddie Pinheiro doing us a favor at the end of the half with the missed kick.
Yeah.
And I mean, the second half, how did you feel, Sonny, watching the second half? Like, I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm here. I'm enjoying it. But like, I wasn't paying that close of attention anymore because it was like, the game's over.
And Caleb, I think, was at 239 at halftime or something along those lines. Like, you can tell we kind of held back at that point in the second half. Carolina was losing players like crazy. It felt like Clowney went down, Trumbull went down. Like, for me, it was just like, I don't want that to happen on the Bears side. So, let's just milk that clock. And, they continue. Then what was it, like right after the halftime, right, is when Kevin Byard had that amazing interception at that point.
Yeah.
That's when I knew. I was like, oh, we're good. I can sit back, I can open up that beer, I can relax a little bit, and I don't get this feeling very, very often. So sit back and enjoy a half and just watch my football team be the clearly better football team against their opponent.
Yeah, it was nice. And I mean, I gotta say, because you mentioned Clowney, I've got to mention this. Like, Darnell Wright kept him quiet when he was out there for the most part, but after he went out, Darnell Wright started just throwing guys, man. Like, it was Pancake City. Like, it was fun to watch him, just like him steamrolling guys, and pass pro just chucking them to the ground. Like, Darnell Wright was having a good time against those backup edge defenders, and it was fun to watch. But yeah, so the second half, I feel like there's not as much to get into. You had the Kevin Byard interception. You had, the Bears put up a few more points on field goals, another touchdown towards the end of the game, which got a little chippy.
Yeah.
Did get a little chippy. That's a little something to talk about. Like, you had Matt Pryor come in there, maybe throw a little punch. And I don't know. I didn't actually see the punch. I didn't sit there dissecting it, but like, I saw him kind of just shove a guy in the face, and but it wasn't like he didn't take a swing at the guy. He's like, get out of my face.
Yeah.
And then it all just blew up behind him. But
yeah. And then I think two of the Panthers guys came up and jumped on him essentially. But Eberflus talked about it. He's like, Matt's got to know better. Like, he's like, you got to set the temperature between lukewarm and warm. You never want to go off like that, and put your team in a position where you're costing them yards or penalties and stuff like that. So I think this is just one of those things where they're like, Matt, come on, you can't do that. And, he's got to learn, like, yeah, you know what? It's one thing when you're up 31-7, but if it's a 17-14 game and that matters, then all of a sudden, like, we can't make those type of mistakes.
Yeah. Now we talked enough about the game. Let's get to our next segment here.
The baddest man.
Sonny, for the Bears, who is the player that the Carolina Panthers were walking back in the locker room and just kind of shaking their head and going like, it's a bad man right there?
There's so many options this week. I love it. I'm going to go with DJ, just because, again, there's got to be that talk, because of the trade. It's the narrative coming into this game, and the fact that, he was basically almost untouched on that first touchdown. And that second one was just an amazing communication play between Caleb and DJ. Talked about it. It's like, I knew that was going to be a touch. 99% that was going to be a touchdown. There's no one who, after the game, felt better than DJ Moore. So I had to give him this title.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. Like, I mean, especially when you consider, I'm not sure how many reps he actually went against JC Horn, but when you consider that guys like JC Horn saw DJ every day in practice, and now they're watching him do it against them, that sticks in their craw a little, probably. Like, it's a bad man. We just let him go. We let him go for Bryce Young over here.
Now, granted, he didn't have a perfect game. He did have that wide open third down drop. So it's not like he played a flawless game. But I just think, like, it was bigger than the game. So, like, off the top of my head, you can tell me 3 or 4 guys that you're about to name, and I would not be surprised. For me, I just wanted to give DJ, just in case you didn't pick him, just because, it's against the Panthers. He circled this date, coming into the season, gets to play at home. There's all this weird, in my opinion, just made up drama about, like, does he like it here? Why is he always sitting alone on the benches? Blah, blah, blah. And just to come out here and, have the performance that he did, I'm really happy for the guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, so just to give a stat line, 5 catches on 8 targets, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Longest went for 34 yards, which Caleb hit a deep ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
He hit, I mean, I guess you could probably say 2 at least in there of like 20 plus air yards, but it looked on the money. Yeah, so 2. I think he had one to Cole Kmet also in the game, but
is that the one where Kmet fell on?
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. I know he was. They showed on the graphic at one point he was 2 for 3 deep.
Yeah.
So I would assume that other one's Kmet because it's 26 yards, and the other one that he has over 20 of the long for the game was DeAndre Swift at 42, and that was a screen. So it had to be a Cole Kmet one, I think. But for my baddest man, I'm going with the thumbs up. I'm going with my new favorite celebration in the NFL. Just like stomp, thumbs up, and smile. I'm going with Gervon Dexter Sr. On his birthday. Showing out, gets a sack, 4 quarterback hits. He was in on another sack. Like, I'm not sure how exactly the scorekeeper put it because DeMarcus Walker has a half sack. Gervon Dexter was right there with him on a sack. I'm not sure how they split that. I think Dexter really, if I'm looking at the stat sheet, he has 1 sack. I think he had 2 half sacks.
Okay.
If I'm really thinking about it a lot, which I try not to. I try to think of half sacks as a full sacks. It's like that other guy wasn't there. He still would have gotten there. So like, what are we really counting here? But Dexter had a great game. He is really rounding out as a pass rusher here. Week 1, I remember watching him and going, he definitely got better as a pass rusher, but there's still on neutral downs. I still have questions about his ability as a pass rusher because he's just a tick slow to flip that trigger from rush lane to pass rusher. And it just felt like he wasn't getting, a lot of times wasn't getting a pass rush move even. It was just like, okay, well, now I'm just going to try to push this guy over. But I feel like slowly throughout these 5 weeks, he's gotten better and better with that. And it's just that's also probably the type of thing that you can't really get better at without live reps. So any offseason work doesn't really help you there. I think the guy's progressing very quickly, playing very well. I still want a little more on the run defense side, but I can't complain about it because I care more about your pass rush ability than your run stuffing, even though I do think stopping the run is very important. I think there's still room for him to grow there, though. I think I see very little ceiling to him as a football player, which is exciting.
Well, the idea is like in one of our preview episodes for this season, like I really said that I felt like our season would go the way Dexter would go. Would he be able to live up to this promise that we saw and that the Bears are telling us that he had? If he did, clogging up that middle of the defensive line was going to be huge for us and would have elevated our defense. And that's exactly what's happened, right? Like, again, he still has things that he needs to work on. But if you told us this would be his performance, like right now, if you could go talk to Q before game 1 and say, this is what you're seeing from Dexter, we would have taken it 10 out of 10 times. And it tells you he's a big reason why we're 3-2 right now.
Mm-hmm. Huge reason. I think it's 4 sacks in the year now. Like, and everyone keeps quoting on like Twitter these like pass rush win rate numbers and stuff, and they're all from like different sources. And I feel like that's some pass rush win rate is what pass rush win rate is it's either, if it's ESPN, I think it's based on a time to like getting off a block or something like that. It's all based on like next gen stats, but if it's PFF or if it's like whenever I do them, the way I do it, it's all the viewer's eyes, right? It's like, did the guy win this rep?
Yeah.
So it's like when you're crossing sources like that for pass rush win rate, it can get kind of sloppy as to like, okay, what are we talking about here? Is this PFF's opinion? Is this Quinten Krzysko's opinion? Is this the guy was off the block in 2.5 seconds this many times? What does off the block even mean? Like that. So there's a lot of context that needs to be put in there within it. Like, I don't think he's better than Jalen Carter. Yeah. I know that's a big thing going around right now.
Yeah.
I don't. I love Gervon Dexter. You can go back and check the tapes from when he was drafted. I might have been the only person in Chicago who was excited about Gervon Dexter, or the only Chicago Bears fan who was like, just so happy that Gervon Dexter just got drafted at 43 or whatever it was, while everyone else is going, this guy can't get off the ball and he stands so tall. Like, I was pumped about him, but I still can't sit here and say he's winning at a higher rate than Jalen Carter, because that dude is just different. But where I'm going with all this, because I'm starting to get lost in my own rhetoric on it, is the guy's growing fast. Guys this big, this strong, this athletic tend to be pretty dang good once they start piecing everything together, and he's piecing everything together. I'm just really excited about his future, and I don't think the stats are the pass rush win rate stats are maybe the best representative of where he is now, but I do think they somewhat represent where he can be eventually.
It's just one of those things. And by the way, shout out to Ron, who says he's a new sub. Appreciate you, Ron.
Yeah.
Also, if you guys are watching this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Costs you guys nothing, supports this show. It sends this show to other Bears fans across all of YouTube. So please help us out with the algorithm. But just the fact that our defensive line, I'm going to focus on the positive side. Our pass rush in general has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
From what I'm saying, like, they're putting pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. And again, just circling back to Dexter, he's just a huge part of that. Like, did Poles do enough? We were obviously looking for upgrades at those positions. Ultimately, we didn't get one. It really looked like we're going to entrust Dexter with a lot of the responsibilities that, a lot of fans, hand up me being one of them, wanted to, spend a little money on in the offseason. We decided not to go that route. And now seeing what Dexter's developing into, he may not be there yet, but I think he's going to be, if he continues like the way this year, maybe a little progression next year, you're talking about a potential All-Pro.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't expect him to grow this much this year.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I did not think, and what I mean by that is I still thought Andrew Billings would be your exclusive one technique. I didn't think Dexter was going to make a jump enough where he could just play a side. And what I mean by that, right now, Andrew Billings is lined up over the right guard or in between the center and the right guard all the time. And Dexter, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. Billings is between the left guard and the center all the time. Dexter is between the right guard and the center all the time. So the offense, anytime they want to, or whenever the formation allows for it, can shift their formation, put a guy in motion to change the strong side of their formation, which will make Dexter kick into the one technique, which gives him added run gap responsibilities. He's been okay with that. Yeah. I did not expect him to be okay with that this year. I expected him to still be playing 3-tech, and you had Andrew Billings stuck at 1-tech, which gave the offense an advantage. The fact that offenses don't have that advantage is really a big factor for the Bears defense right now and how they can attack teams, especially when you factor in Billings showing what he can do at 3 technique for the first time in his career, getting that pass rush juice going of saying, oh yeah, big boy can rush. Like, it's
what a season he's having.
Yeah. That rep where he was unblocked was just hysterical to be like Andy Dalton, like, oh shit, there's 330 pounds on me. Like,
no, he's had a fantastic season. Like you're one of the main people who's been talking about him for a few weeks now. It's just one of the steals of the Ryan Poles era, and I'm super grateful that we've got him on our line.
And one of the things, just to hammer home what you're talking about with the D line, the parts individually on the Bears D line are less than the sum of the parts. Like, they play such a team-oriented pass rush that's really impressive and really takes time to build that. Like, the way that I think it was in the first quarter, maybe the second quarter, they had a sack. It was Dexter and Walker together combined for a sack. That sack doesn't happen unless it was a team D-line sack. It was like, well, the coverage was good on it too, so a full defense sack. But you had both the edge rushers setting the top of the pocket, locking that close by getting speed rushes over the top, and you had Dexter and Walker playing a game in the middle that got them free towards Dalton, and was just like, that is a scheme sack. You need to have the athletes who can execute it, which is what they did. Mm-hmm. But one guy doesn't do his job, that sack doesn't get home. Darrell Taylor doesn't set the back of that pocket, it's not a sack. So that team aspect, that teamwork that it takes to create that, I think is something that gets overlooked in the individual stats when we talk about who had what sacks. Of like, there's a lot of group effort that goes into what the Bears are doing on defense right now, and it's really exciting to see it because they're all bought into it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, build that confidence against teams like this because it's going to get tougher. It's going to get tougher. We've got our secondaries playing great. We had who was it that gave was it Brisker who almost knocked their guy unconscious?
Almost knocked himself unconscious in the process too.
Yeah. That was again, they're all playing with a little moxie to them, and it's nice to have had that game at home. Rushing defense wise, we got up so much so early that Carolina had to abandon that because you saw what Chuba did on that second series. It's still something that the Bears themselves are going to have to figure out over the next few weeks. I think I'm sure we're going to talk about this in the last segment. Like, if there's one area of focus that this team clearly still has, is just the regressing that we're having when it comes to our rush defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like let's just get into the next segment to get into it.
The nicest man.
So the nicest man, this is the guy who's going to help you move, the guy you're asking to drive you to the airport. Like it's the guy, he's just a nice guy. And like, he's going to help you out however he can. On the football field, that might not always be the best trait. Now, for me, and the reason I said, let's just jump into this. And I was thinking while we were talking pre-show that it might be Roschon Johnson as far as an offensive guy goes, because he had 2 touchdowns. He got in the end zone. That is bottom line what matters, right, for his role. But at the same time, he did have opportunities in the middle of the field that he really did not have much efficiency out of. So that's where my head was going. But before I get into mine, Sonny, where are you going with nicest man? Because I don't want to steal yours as I'm like getting into it in the conversation and not thinking it.
No, yeah. Well, mine's a little off the cuff. I think I mentioned to you. For me, you can go with the guy on the defensive line. For me, I want to give Caleb his due. And there's a lot of football fans out there, and in particular, the ones I'm disappointed with are the Bears fans who are in the stadium who all of a sudden, after 3-4 weeks, were starting to doubt if Caleb was the right pick or if just Jaden Daniels' kid was the move. Caleb is continuing to get better every single week. 20 for 2 weeks ago we heard 350 yards but on 52 passes or something like that. Well, how's 302 yards on 29 passes? And there were good reads. Like it was one of those where and he was able to rush the ball. He had a couple first downs. I think he had 40 yards rushing almost, or is it 34, something along those lines?
30 something at least.
34 yards rushing. He's growing. He's learning, and that's the key to this season. We've already talked about this. Jaden Daniels, awesome. He's played fantastic. Trust me, I know. I got him on my fantasy team. I know he's throwing out numbers. But when you're talking about just pure football player, the Bears are throwing a lot more at Caleb Williams than Washington is doing at Jaden. And Caleb is step by step getting better every single week. And so for me, the nicest man is it's a nicer way to say who I'm hating on this past week. And for me, it's the Bears fans who are starting to question whether we made the right pick or not at number 1 overall.
I like that. I like that aspect of it. And for me, for nicest man, back to where we were talking about when we first transitioned over to this, I'm going with the D-tackle depth. Right? It's Chris Williams and it's Byron Cowher. And Chris Williams, he has some nice stuff as a pass rusher. He has some nice juice, some nice burst. But on that big touchdown run that Chuba Hubbard had, he was the guy who got too far upfield. Now, I think it was Billings' assignment to get over a gap and a half to close that off, and he was a touch late on that. But I don't know. I just have a hard time blaming the guy who's going a gap and a half when Chris Billings is flying upfield on that and just getting washed out from it. Like, I just have to think you put up a bit more of a fight, it squeezes that gap a little smaller, because like mid play, pre-snap, you can look at the splits and say, okay, this is the gap. It's just this much space, right? But while the play's going on, the wider that guy gets upfield, the bigger that gap gets, and the bigger it gets. And next thing, you're really asking Billings to cover 3 gaps, not a gap and a half, like pure size wise. So Chris Williams on that, like, really, I'm nervous about him in run defense when he's on the field. I like his pass rush juice, like I said. And Byron Cowart, I really didn't notice today. I know he was on the field. And I mean, he must have been doing enough out there for me to not notice him giving up a bunch of run, but like also Panthers didn't have much opportunity to run. Like,
right.
They were down so much so quickly. I mean, the Bears still gave up 6.3 yards per carry on the ground. It's not like the Panthers couldn't run. They just couldn't afford to run once they're down 3 scores. So I'm a little bit nervous about this backup D tackle room, because I think that in a close game, that can really hurt you. And that can be the reason why you lose, when you can't stop the run like that.
You're not going to go up 31-7 on every team. If you're going to go up 31-7, then fine. You don't really have to worry about your run defense all that much. But it's going to get a lot tougher. And these teams are going to realize that, hey, this is a defense you can run on. And again, when we talk about what we're going to have to fix, I think you made a great point there. It's just watch that game tape, try to figure it out. Because is it moving guys around? It's a technique? Like, something's not connecting on the rushing end. And so that's where a lot of the focus has to be, especially once we get into that bye week, which I think is in 2 weeks. I think that's where they really got to, okay, what else can we try here? Because right now, again, our offense is clicking, but it's not going to click like this all the time, especially when we start playing NFC North, much more physical and beat them up style. Like, we're going to have to figure out this rush defense by the second half of the season.
And it's something they did last year. I mean, it's not like Justin Jones was some outstanding run stuffer or anything. He was fine. Justin Jones is a fine player in this league, but he's a fine rotational player. That's what he is. And it's hard to sit here and say the loss of Justin Jones was that big, but I think getting Zach Pickens back will be big whenever that finally happens, because he's only played 7 snaps on the year in that week 2 game. He was started the year with, I think it was a groin injury, came back for that Sunday night football game against the Texans, played 7 snaps and hasn't played since. So I'm assuming he re-aggravated it, coming back early for the big matchup against a team who the Bears might have been outmatched against. Like, that makes sense to me that you'd push to come back for that. But I don't know. I mean, I end up sitting here going, like, I don't know the answers at D tackle, just because I don't know that there are answers on this roster unless Zach Pickens made a lot of growth this offseason. Because even him last year, I didn't feel great about his run defense either. He was a little better than Dexter at it, but like, it still wasn't something that he did very strongly. So I'm not sure that you have the tools on this roster to really become a strong run defense, but they were strong enough last year, which makes me think when you're up against it and you get Pickens back out there, you do have enough to sustain and to manage it. But right now, without Pickens, it's just thin pickings, to be cute about it.
You're very cute. I think that's what it limits the ceiling to the team, right? Like that's what keeps you from being a 12-13 win team, as opposed to right now, where I think our ceiling's probably like 9 or 10 wins. If we can get to 9 or 10, I'll be satisfied. If we could shore that up, especially with that back end NFC North schedule, all of a sudden you could be talking about, hey, can this team win the division? But right now, it's such. Everyone sees it. If you're watching Bears football, you see, like, oh man, they're having tough time guarding the rush. And if I can see it, opposing coaches are going to see it. And when the game is, 21-17 in the fourth quarter, are we going to have the guys back there to make the stops when we need them? Because we know that the opposition is going to keep handing it off. It's going to keep handing it off. And then all of a sudden, if they are able to sustain 6, 7, 8 minute drives and score, and we can't score coming back, then we're 9, 10 wins is best case scenario.
Well, and I think when you really think about it, and you think about what this defense is, right? What Matt Eberflus's defense have always been. You end up back at the Tampa 2 philosophy guys. And I say philosophy because it's not like the guys like Matt Eberflus or like Sean McDermott or even like Lovie Smith. It's not like they're Tampa 2 merchants. It's not like they just live in it all game long and that's what they do. Or even in key spots, it's not even what they do anymore. It's more the philosophy behind what Tampa 2 was is really what roots in what these coaches fall back to of the hits mentality, of hustle, of team tackling, of creating takeaways, of bend, don't break, give up yards, but don't give up the big play. Because it's not like that's the coverage they're running all the time, but that's the mentality they play with and they call the game with. Like, these teams tend to be built with smaller, faster players.
Mm-hmm.
They just do. They tend to struggle more against the run. Like, you think about how many times in the playoffs have you watched the Bills defense just not able to stop the run late in the game? And it's like, you have the superstar QB, so that's why you have a chance playing like that, but they keep getting gashed for 5-6 yards of carry late in games when they're down because they just don't have the horses to do it because they're not built that way. And that's the worry with this style of defense. The example that you can go even further with that'll probably hit every Bears fan a little harder.
Uh-oh.
You think about the Super Bowl, 2006, technically 2007 Super Bowl, but like fourth quarter of that game, could the Bears stop the run for their life?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they just, that's not what that team was built for. That team is built to get a lead and keep piling on as they get turnovers, as other quarterbacks panic, they get better. The more comfortable the quarterback gets, the defense isn't really in a position to make them stop because the quarterback doesn't really have the game in their hands, you know, at that point, once they're that comfortable. So I don't know how good this run defense is ever going to be. I just know it needs to be better than this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with any of that. The same way I talked about Dexter is the ceiling and the floor to the team in the offseason. Right now, that the adjustments that we end up making with the rush, whether we're capable of making it or not, that's going to ultimately decide whether we have a chance at winning this division or if we just are going to be a very solid potential playoff team.
Yeah, no, it will be. Now, let's move this on over to our next segment here.
Keys to victory.
Now, every week before the game, over at ontapsportsnet.com, really easy to remember, really easy to type in your toolbar, ontapsportsnet.com. No dashes, no spaces, nothing weird. We do our keys to victory. We discuss them on our pregame show every single week. We talk through what matters in this game. Why does it matter? Like this past week, me and Ron were on the show and it was like, I had one that I came to the show with. He had another. We didn't know the third and we kind of brainstormed it there on the show. So check out the pregame show, check out the article where we write them all out in more detail than we discuss on the show. But in the postgame show, we want to review these and see, did the Bears do this? So first one here, keep Chuba or Chuba. I always say Chuba. And then I'm like, it's not Chuba, it's Chuba. Keep Chuba in check. Over the 2 weeks prior to this, Chuba Hubbard had 290 scrimmage yards on 48 touches, 6 yards per touch. Like, he was going off. Sonny, do you think the Bears did a good job of this today?
Well, a good job in the sense of scoring 27 points in the first half so that Chuba was no longer an option. If you're talking about just zeroing in on the plays where Chuba got a handoff, probably not, especially that 38-yard touchdown that I mentioned on the second series. But there was no risk of a Chuba problem today because the Bears simply just, again, 27 points in that first half. Carolina could no longer really incorporate him into the game plan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the offense did the job for them to keep Chuba in check because the defense didn't really need to by a certain point. And that, like we talked about, I was a little nervous in the first quarter when it seemed like they're not keeping him in check.
Yeah,
This because you don't keep him in check, Andy Dalton's life becomes easier, Andy Dalton's a vet who knows what he's doing. When his life's easy, he can roll. Like,
he's played in Soldier Field. He's got experience. You know, it's not like a complete true road game for him.
Yeah. So if I'm giving him a letter grade, I'm giving the team probably a C on this. And I might be giving the defense like actually a D. Yeah, unfortunately, which is hard to say when a defense only gave up 10 points on the day, but they gave 7.5 yards per carry, 97 yards on 13 carries to Chuba. Like they didn't exactly keep him in check, but they got the job done either way because the offense covered this one for them. So I'm giving him a C on that overall.
I think that's fair, but again, heavily weighted towards the offensive game plan.
Now, our second key of the game was feel the power. This was about getting an effective downhill run game being the focus of the offense this week and using that to open stuff up for Caleb. Sonny, how do you think that went?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, first series ended up with a 3-and-out, but then all of a sudden we saw a lot of Swift. We saw a lot of Roschon Johnson scoring touchdowns once we got it to the red zone, and that's kind of what opened things up for Caleb. I did 20 for 29, but it's because Swift was finding holes and getting to the end line, not quite crossing over the end, the touchdown, but that had, when we're sitting here talking about 27 points in the first half, a lot of it had to do with, some of it was screen passes as well, but the same concept, same idea. I think
when I'm grading O-line, I mark screen passes as run plays. Like
exactly.
That's what they are essentially.
So in that case, I would give them an A. I think that game plan worked out really well.
Yeah, I'm going an A- on this, and the minus is just for the first series. Like it's like for making me sweat about it and being like, oh, don't do this, Shane. But A-.
He was about to give nicest man to a guy who scored 2 touchdowns today, and now he's grading an offense on one bad series. Oh man,
for making me sweat, man. If that series was in the second half, I wouldn't even noticed it. The fact that that's how you open the game, like in a game where I think you need to be a downhill rushing attack, and you're opening it with a speed out, it's just like, what are we doing here, man? Like, look at this D line. Look at the Panthers D line. You're not telling me you're sitting there licking your chops, ready to just run downhill on these guys. Like, that A- still a good grade. It's a 92% or something. Like, they did outstanding, but just that making me nervous.
rough grader, but all right, fair enough. A is an A.
I want to mention the comment from Scott from Iowa about Doug Kramer, Illini legend. Kramer, Hinsdale Central legend, Doug Kramer. I went to Glenbard West. I'm not here to hype up Hinsdale Central. I don't like those guys, but evidently the Bears do because they got Doug Kramer and Karan Amagaji on the team. But Doug Kramer in motion as a lead blocker is a thing, and it's only a matter of time till we see him getting carry.
I'm not gonna lie. I was very close. I kind of wanted to make him my baddest man because whatever they're doing, like they didn't do much of it in the first half. They brought him back out in the second half. And again, it works. Whatever, like obviously, it looks like, unfortunately for him, he's not an NFL offensive lineman. He's just not big enough. But he's in his, third year now? He's found a role. And this is credit to the staff, too, for thinking a little bit outside the box. Like just his pure physicality for the role that they asked him to do is just working out really, really well. And I hope it's something that they really, at this point, just incorporate into the game plan, especially once we're close to that end zone.
Yeah, no. And can I tell you a secret?
Please do.
He's bigger than Coleman Shelton.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he's bigger than Coleman Shelton. He's got longer arms than Coleman Shelton, graded better athletically than Coleman Shelton. I'm not exactly sure that Coleman Shelton is better than him, but that's just because I've never seen him play an NFL game. Like I've never seen him play center in a real NFL game.
That's my point. Like the coaching staff has seen him for like 3 seasons now, right? So it's like, if they're not putting him out there, then they obviously see that there's some sort of limit to him. But again, credit to the staff for, instead of just moving on from the players, like, hey, how can we put you in a role where you can help this football team?
Yeah.
And, he's kind of becoming like a Twitter legend at this point, just because, all the videos are pointing him out, and it's fun to see. Again, former Illini legend, like you mentioned. So I got a little extra special place in my heart for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and it's only a matter of time before he's getting Pro Bowl votes as a fullback. So, like, I'm here for that. Pro offensive line, the show will always be. But now, our third key to the game, our most important key to the game, was Eberflus's whiteboard. And this came down to Andy Dalton's seen it all. You're not going to confuse him, like, easily. Conceptually, he knows how to beat whatever concept you're going to throw at him. It's just a question of how quick he can decipher what that concept is. So we said we need to see from the defensive play calling plenty of variety, creativity, changing looks, changing fronts, stuff changing pre-snap to post-snap. We need to see more creativity out there, because if they got the run game going and you're giving Andy Dalton static looks or more predictable things, he's going to be able to chew you up, because he's a smart quarterback. You don't last in this league this long without being one. Some of the good games he's had were probably against more static looks. So, Sonny, how do you think Eberflus and Eric Washington did today?
I think it was a very well called game on the defensive side. Now, again, we keep going back to this. The offense helped, and so all of a sudden you can just go and focus on your pass rush. But I think they were aggressive when they needed to be aggressive. I think Dalton was never settled in this game. He never really got into a rhythm. I think you mentioned, he made a long throw, but he got hit afterwards immediately by Dexter. And then all of a sudden, immediately after that, I think they had to settle for a field goal. It's just picking the right guys to be aggressive. I think it worked out for us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Dalton was a check down merchant most of today, which means he wasn't comfortable with what he was seeing and how to beat it downfield. So he just had to go to the check down. That's the way I'm reading that. So I thought they did a good job of limiting his options and taking away the yards after the catch from those options. Now, you mentioned the Dexter hit, and I want to key in on that just a little bit more, because something I've been noticing, and something I noticed going back to Dexter's Florida tape, this dude steamrolls people. Like, he is big, strong, and thick. Like, there is no light hit from Javon Dexter.
Yeah.
And so last week, I thought when he got a hit on Matt Stafford, and it's clean. That's the thing that I think is really valuable here.
Yep.
He is hitting these guys hard in a manner that is not drawing flags and is clean after the ball is gone. And I thought Matt Stafford was shook up by it last week. He was not good for the next drive, like for the rest of that drive after that play. I thought the same thing about Dalton today. There is value in having that guy of just like, when he gets a lick on your quarterback, it's probably the drive. Doesn't matter if it was a sack or not, because that guy's a little shook and needs a minute, and he doesn't have that minute to get better.
You saw it on that drive. And I think it was Robert Schmitz, a friend of the program, who pointed it out that when you look at Dexter's film, there's few players in the NFL better that once he gets past the offensive lineman, of just being quick to zero in and get to that quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't waste any energy. He goes straight after him. And, as you just got finished saying, it's one of his strongest traits, because mentally it gets into the minds of this quarterback, especially after that first hit. Like, man, that guy's big, and, he's coming.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely the mental factor, and also just the human being factor. You get crushed. You just need a minute.
It hurts.
And you only got 40 seconds on the play clock. You don't have a minute. Yeah. You got to get the play. You got to hear the play call, get it in, communicate it to everybody, get to the line, start reading. And the whole time you're breathing heavy. You feel like your chest is caving in. It's just like, that fucking hurt. There's value to that. And I think Dexter, I think he delivers the paid quarterbacks better than most players in the league. I think there is value there that cannot be shown on any stat sheet or anything like that, of just his hits matter a little more.
Yeah. There's no PFF grade for, ouchie hits or anything like that.
Yeah. I like that, for ouchie hits. That's a thumbs up for me. But Sonny, what are the Bears doing tomorrow? Right? They're jumping on a plane, going over the pond.
I mean, I really think it's just trying to figure out the rush defense. Offense. I don't want anyone on the offensive side to change anything from the last 2 weeks. Just keep doing what you're doing. Defensive side, like unless you figure out a way where the offense is so good that they're going to be scoring 31 points, in 3 quarters, I don't think that's going to be happening. It's just work on what we can work on against these weaker teams. Jacksonville's 1-4, I think. Obviously a team that's struggling, quarterback who's struggling. It's right now is the time to shore up these weaknesses. And so for me, it's again, I know we've been harping on it for a while, but just let's figure it out, man. Let's go win this division.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Bears are jumping on an airplane tomorrow to go to London, going early. Last time they played in London, Matt Nagy was coach. They went the day before, and it was like their entire premise was we're not gonna change our schedule, right? It's just like we are going there as our clocks are going to stay the same as if we are, in America the whole time, in Chicago the whole time. Very different approach this time. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if there is a right approach to this,
right?
But I kind of like the idea of going early better. If I'm being honest, that just sounds more reasonable to me, as opposed to like I'm a bigger person. I'm not comfortable on airplanes. I can't sleep on an airplane. I'm sure the Bears are flying a lot nicer than I am, but like still, it's just it's different stress on your body to fly. Like sure. It's going to change your hydration levels. It's going to change your the way your muscles are contracting. Like the pressure from being that high up is going to impact your body in certain ways. I like the idea that you can be further removed from that plane ride and the impacts that it has on your body personally. I'm not a doctor. I'm not even a scientist. I can't actually say that I know anything about this. This is all just my perception, but I like the idea they can get there a little early and then, install their game plan over there and maybe see the field a few extra times, understand what they're dealing with, what size cleats they need to be bringing with them to the field on game day. I think there is value to that.
I think Eberflus was asked about it, and he did say that the science dictated that it makes more sense to go early. But, as you said earlier in this episode, like these London games, all these European games, like there's such a dose of randomness to all of them that I just don't think any NFL team has really figured it out yet. Right? Is there a single team out there right now who just consistently goes out there and, overperforms? I don't know. I think you're right. Logically, you're right. I'm also a few credits short of my medical degree, so it's not like I'm speaking of any sort of knowledge, but hopefully it works. What does Jacksonville do? They go out there so often. Do they go early? Do you know? Are they?
I'm not even sure.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but maybe this is something for the preview episode, like, something we can look up, because they go there every year. So I almost kind of wonder if they have a set plan that they feel like has worked.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that they stay over there for like 2 or 3 weeks because they play multiple games there. But I'm not sure when they actually go within this week of their first trip out there. I would assume it's earlier because if you're going to be there longer, you'd think you'd want to get there earlier to acclimate to everything. It's not like the strategy the Bears had under Nagy of like, we're just not changing our clocks.
Yeah.
They can't really do that. So I would think earlier makes sense for them. I will say in regards to this game, if there's one thing that I think can be at all predictable about it, it's that whichever team is going to punch harder tends to win. Mm-hmm. Whichever team wants it more tends to win, or needs it more tends to win. And so Bears need to be ready for a dogfight. Like no one's going to be feeling great in this game. They need to come out throwing haymakers and preserving those haymakers. Like I guess being a little calculated with them, but like I want to see him punch him in the mouth they are going for it right off the bat in this game. I don't think there's any tiptoeing into it. And
the nation gets to watch Caleb again, right? Usually these games are kind of in their own solo window. First one was against Houston, and obviously that Houston's a very different type of team than Jacksonville's going to be. And we've seen it as Bears fans, Caleb get better every single week. this could be, some sort of coming out party for Caleb for the rest of the NFL fans, because then you're talking about the bye week, but then after the bye week, I think we get the Commanders, and that's when we're going to be, the whole world's going to be talking about, that the Daniels versus Caleb matchup. So I'm hoping for a big game from Caleb next weekend.
Fun fact for you: this is going to be a big game over there because the Jaguars are like the adopted team in London, right? Because that's like that they keep a home base there of sorts. The first Super Bowl ever broadcast to Europe was Super Bowl 20, was the 85 Bears. There are a lot of Bears fans over there from that Super Bowl. So it's going to be a rowdy atmosphere, I think, because you're going to have the two like favorite teams of London there, by my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of family out there, and there are definitely Bears fans. So we'll have the On Tap Sports guy, Tony. I hope you're listening. Send us over there, and we'll cover the game for you. I don't need the exact plane that the Bears are going to be flying over, but hotels and accommodations is fine. I can settle for that.
Yeah. We'll get Tony right on that. We'll be over there live broadcasting. But until that actually comes to reality, Sonny, why don't we get out of here the only way we know how?
Bear down, Q.
Bear down.